Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Vice Admiral Schultz, wonderful to have you here before us today. Thank you for your service and your willingness to take on this added responsibility. It's always good to follow my friend Senator Sullivan, who I know reminded you of the coastline of Alaska, so I'm going to certainly remind you that second to Alaska is the state of Michigan in terms of the amount of coastline we have. So the Coast Guard provides incredibly valuable services to my state, and I want to thank you and for your service and all the men and women who serve in the Coast Guard, the great work they do in Michigan. You and I have spent some time in my office, and if I could also say publicly, I appreciate your statements about how much you enjoyed your service in Michigan earlier in your career, and the fact that your wife loved Michigan as well. So I appreciate those comments. I also appreciated our follow-up yesterday regarding the investigation into an incident that has just recently occurred in the Straits of Mackinac. You know, as we discussed, the incident involves an anchor strike on an electric transmission line, leading to the spill of about 600 gallons of mineral oil. And I know the Coast Guard is leading the Unified Command response to that spill. We've also learned that potentially the same vehicle that struck the transmission lines may have struck the Line 5 oil pipeline, which has experienced some denting. And as you know and we discussed, the prospect of an oil spill in the Straits of Mackinac would be absolutely catastrophic. And given the weather event that we just had this past weekend with seas in excess of 12 feet and approaching higher ones, it also could cause a situation where it is very difficult, if not impossible, to clean up a spill. In fact, in a briefing that I had with the Coast Guard prior to this weekend, I was informed that the skimmers in the Straits of Mackinac would be ineffective in seas greater than 3 feet. So we definitely had a situation with a damaged pipeline where we didn't have eyes on that pipeline, even though it's been a couple weeks, that we weren't sure if something happened, we could actually clean it up. The company shut down the pipeline temporarily, but has now reopened it. My question to you, though, is are we still on track for underwater visual inspections to be conducted today?
Senator, my understanding as of an update this morning is that the remote-operated vehicle and side-stand sonar operations may be delayed a couple of days during weather. My understanding is as soon as they have the appropriate weather window to deploy those capabilities, that'll be done. So, again, this was about a 9:30 update that told me we may be sliding a couple of days to the right. But we share your commitment to get eyes on to the pipeline, the cables down there, to fully understand what's going on, sir.
So because of weather, another couple days?
Sir, potentially a couple of days. I think they will put the capability in the water as soon as the weather window allows that to occur.
But the ROVs are on site.
Yes, sir.
They finally arrived. My understanding, well, we know it's taken at least 2 weeks for that to get up there. That seems to me unacceptable to get the equipment up there. Obviously, weather delays it further, but they could have been in the water sooner. How can we get these assets to a critical place like the Straits of Mackinac a whole lot quicker?
Well, Senator, these remote-operated vehicles, there's a finite number. They're expensive piece of gear. They are sited in, many times in the Gulf of Mexico, supporting the offshore industry down there in different locations, research locations. I know you have some interest in some type of a center up there, oil spill type center. That could be a venue potentially for that. Again, I won't commit to, most of those ROVs are owned in the private sector, so how they're allocated, what their business cost share models are, I'm not an expert on that, sir, but the center, as you advocate, could be a place. Obviously, a center like that, we'd want to tie the work of that center to an R&D center, which is doing work on oil spill and specifically some tar sands like oil spill research. We're doing some work in Kalamazoo in the river. We're doing some work in Lake Huron and a third site later this summer. We've got a report due out probably summer 19 here that'll talk about our findings on that oil spill research that our R&D center is doing, sir.
Well, as you mentioned, we have language for a National Center of Expertise for freshwater oil spill cleanup in the Coast Guard reauthorization bill, and certainly appreciate, and I hope I have your commitment to work with the creation of that center so that we learn more about freshwater cleanup. We know a lot about saltwater cleanup with oil spills. My understanding is we don't know anywhere near the same amount when it comes to freshwater. And having a center that brings the Coast Guard expertise as well as our academic institutions and private sector could bridge that gap and also have pre-positioned equipment in a critical area. Would you agree?
Senator, I think that is a space that we could continue to look at mutually and understand your views on that and where you see that going and bring our expertise to that, sir.
Is it still the case that the transmission lines and the Line 5 are being handled as two separate incidents with the Unified Command working to deploy one ROV to inspect the transmission lines, and Enbridge, the company that operates Line 5, they're going to send their own rented ROV craft to inspect the line? Is that correct?
Sir, I don't have that level of fidelity on the multiple ROVs. I think the pipeline falls under the Pipeline Hazardous Safety Management Agency as a peer federal agency. We are on scene as a federal on-scene coordinator for the spillage from the cables, worst case scenario up to 800 gallons. We've been responding to that. We're part of the RP with the state of Michigan, with ATC, the responsible party there, sir. So there is a little bit of a splitting of functionalities across the two federal agencies involved, sir. If they're specifically using a different ROV on the cables versus the pipeline, I don't have that fidelity, sir, on the details. I apologize for that.